I adored Psychonauts back in the day. The adventures of a child who ran away from the circus to enroll in a summer camp for psychics in the hope of joining the special Psychonauts agency. His misadventures eventually led to him venturing into numerous brains in order to save the people they belong to and ultimately save the world. It was a cult hit with many adoring fans who loved its great sense of humour, zany art style and imaginative level design. However, its success was a slow burn, with the love growing gradually over the years, which meant that initially it sold poorly, meaning a much desired sequel failed to materialise. But now, 16 years later, that sequel is a reality thanks to a combination of a crowdfunding campaign and a lot of acquisition money from Xbox. And I, of course, jumped straight in. I've waited long enough. It's time for more Psychonauts. And it is superb. But what makes this long-awaited sequel so worth the wait? Here are 6 reasons why I am so happy to have Psychonauts back after all this time. There will be some minor gameplay spoilers throughout, but I'll try and avoid story spoilers where possible. One major aspect of the original game was its wealth of psychic abilities that gave protagonist Raz a number of ways to interact with the world around him. The sequel brings all those abilities back with a limited number of new abilities to add to that. However, the way these abilities are handed to the player is brilliant. For a start, Psychonauts 2 avoids the Metroid problem and doesn't strip all of Raz's powers from the first game away in order to hand them out slowly across the game. Instead, they're all drip-fed gradually in the first level, with separate rooms designed to introduce each as it's obtained, before you move to the next room to get the next one. You also get clairvoyance as soon as you're back in the real-world hub area, since that is the best place to receive this non-combat ability for the first time. The remaining new abilities are handed out slowly throughout the game and always around the point where you're best equipped to play with it and get used to it. One level introduces the mental connection hookshot ability, and then after that's done, you don't get time bubble until the following level. Both of these levels are heavily built around those abilities, allowing proper experimentation, and they don't overload you with new stuff in the process. But as well as this balanced introduction of abilities, the final ability you get is also one of my favourite additions to the game. Archetype sees Raz getting a paper clone who can aid him in battle and is required to solve certain puzzles. And he's adorable, running around happily, turning himself into a paper aeroplane to follow Raz upwards, and just generally talks like this.
Aw, that's cute! My clone thinks he's real.
Psychonauts 2 still retains some issues in combat from the first game, but the gameplay overall is so consistently streamlined and the abilities are used in a variety of intuitive ways. This means you always know what to use and nothing feels like a pointless addition to Raz's kit. It is a 3D platformer that knows exactly how to keep focus, and that's excellent. One of the great strengths of the first game was its diverse level design, representing the various different mindscapes of its colourful cast of characters. From the twisted suburbs of the Milkman conspiracy to Mia's retro dance party, and from Sasha's highly ordered cube to a black velvet painting world, Psychonauts excelled in surprising you. Psychonauts 2 does not disappoint in this area. The level design is excellent throughout, from a casino hospital where you have to break various gambling machines to a cooking show full of deranged puppets, and from Monkey Ball in a germ city to a library world full of papercraft and side-scrolling sections that look a bit like House of Leaves in all honesty. I was always excited to see what was coming next, and there always were happy surprises that made the excitement worth it. The cooking show atmosphere was incredibly fun and existentially terrifying as a giant pig machine had to chop up another pig that actually wanted to become bacon. The opening level contains a mixture of bland office aesthetics with dental-based horror in the most freakish way possible. I can see why they warned about this up front. The library level opens out into a seedy industrial area that you have to dig around in for clues that I've seen described as feeling similar to Sly Cooper in its structure, which I'm actually inclined to agree with, a feeling only enhanced by the game sharing a music composer. The Germ City level opened with a bowling lane, which is probably one of the finest openings to a platformer level that I've ever seen. And then there's a level with a nightmare version of It's a Small World that not only has an obnoxious looping song that parodies Disney's infamously catchy jingle, but each room also has a hidden gramophone that you can smash to finally stop it from playing. Oh man, Psychonauts 2's level design is so good. Psychonauts was already a good looking game. I'm eternally of the opinion that games with stylized art direction tend to hold up long term better than those focused on photorealism, and the original game is proof of this. In many ways it does look like a game from 2005, but it also holds up better than some of its contemporaries due to how unique its art design is. Which is perhaps why Double Fine hasn't done much to change this art direction for the sequel beyond improved textures afforded to them by modern systems. And it works! Bringing that style up to modern visual standards highlights how delightfully weird it all is, and allows for even more expressive animation and more vibrant visual effects. It truly does feel like a living cartoon. The result is a game that feels modern while also feeling very much like the original 2005 game in equal measure. I highly approve. Okay, gather round everyone, it's time for Bob to be a mental health advocate again. You see, this game opens on a content warning, one that talks about how the game contains artistic interpretations of serious mental conditions. It acknowledges that the game is light-hearted in its tone, but its themes could still be distressing to some. It also advises looking at resources provided by TakeThis.org in an effort to help people who may be struggling. This floored me right out of the gate, as I never see something this comprehensive opening a game. Naturally, there was a bit of minor pushback from the usual corners of the internet that are mad at everything, but for the most part this was received well. I loved it too, as it shows how much more willing the industry is to recognise different needs of different players. But this is only one way in which Psychonauts 2 goes out of its way to depict mental illness in a sympathetic way. It makes a huge effort to place positive mental health representation at the heart of everything it does, while still retaining a sense of humour and not becoming preachy or tokenistic. We see this in one character who's clearly a sufferer of PTSD, but we were only told this in a flashback that stands out but only actually makes up a small portion of her mindscape. In another mindscape, we're introduced to panic attacks as enemies, ones that disrupt everything and cause havoc and only be dealt with by slowing them down. Much like real panic attacks. There's a level that steers close to representing childhood abuse and alcoholism, woven into the fabric of the level, a level where the character's troubles are quite literally bottled up. And the anxiety of the timer and the cooking show level represents the social anxiety of that character in a way that I did find relatable too. Not once were these conditions mocked, even when they were otherwise surrounded by jokes. They were also never magically fixed either, as harsh confrontations were always required in helping those characters overcome their issues. And the way all of this was woven into the writing was expertly done. There are no PSAs about mental health bogging it all down, nor did it take any of it lightly, but it was just there as part of the wider narrative themes underpinning most of the story. This is mental health representation done incredibly right, and all wrapped up in a goofy, cartoony vibe that prevents it from getting too heavy. Bravo. We all love Jack Black, and his enduring friendship with Double Fine's Tim Schafer rolls on, as the two have continued to work together since Brutal Legend. So naturally he's here, and it's good to hear him, not least because he gets to strut his stuff as a singer just as much as an actor here. His standard voice performance is great, but then he gets his own massive musical number. Okay, it's not the greatest song in the world, but it's a great moment where the game allows itself to get weird and ridiculous, just like Jack Black himself. Also Elijah Wood's here too.
I can smell the Big Bang!
Which is also neat. When a sequel takes this long to release, there's always a chance the creators might dabble in some nostalgia baiting, an obsession with bringing elements back from the past in a way to say, hey, remember this from all those years ago. So for Psychonauts, this could involve trotting out the beloved G-Men somewhere just so that we could go, oh, remember how funny these guys were? Or maybe filling the cast with campers from the first game, regardless of how essential they were to the actual story. Thankfully, Psychonauts 2 completely throws this out the window and opts instead to stick to being a follow-up to the first game. This means continuing the story and themes without inserting characters and references in where it's just not needed. Set immediately after the VR game Rhombus of Ruin, which itself is set immediately after the first game, Psychonauts 2 simply gets on with telling the story. It delves more into lore, with more of the famous Psychonauts getting their day in the sun, a deeper dive into what the organisation does, and an examination of Raz's relationship to his wider family. There are nods to the first game of course, but these are all plot points that continue on, whether that's Ford Cruller and his broken psyche, Raz's relationship to his girlfriend, and characters who just happen to be related to characters from the first game getting a focus. Nothing feels forced or unnecessary, and there are even a couple of gags about the discrepancy between the in-universe passage of time and the real-world gap between games.
Campfire at Whispering Rock. I haven't been here for days.
This is how a long-awaited sequel should be. Continue the story, bring back the elements that made the first so beloved, and trim out anything that's pandering and unnecessary. Psychonauts 2 has been a long time coming, but the end result is exactly what I wanted in every possible way. Thank you Double Fine for this amazing experience, and I look forward to the third game in 2037. And thank you for watching. Please give the video a like if you enjoyed it, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos. I also have a Patreon that you can donate to, like these lovely people, and it helps fund the channel for the future. As always, thank you for joining me, and I'll see you again very soon.